and how he feels about the SAG-AFTRA strike. Nate Bender here at the 2016 Alamo City Comic-Con, and I'm hanging out with Sean Schemmel. You know him best as the voice of Goku from Dragon Ball Z, but he's hanging out here with me to talk about the SAG-AFTRA strike that's going on against the video game industry. Sean, tell me a little bit about your perspective about the strike.
Well, the strike is important for a number of reasons, and it's kind of boiled down to a culture clash. And there was a recent article in a newspaper I'm not going to mention where it was kind of a hit job on us, and basically implying that we make $800 a day. Why are we complaining? The thing is you have to understand that $800 a day within context of the entertainment industry as a whole, and within the context of what it's like to be a voice actor. Sure, you make $800 in a day, that's a great day. The problem is that every single video game is a job interview. Every single video game is an audition. So, for example, I worked as Strong on Fallout 4, killed my voice on that. I enjoy killing my voice for a part. I like bringing great voices to the stage, or the screen, or the video games, and the video games, that's funny. I enjoy doing that, but I also want to get compensated, properly for my voice work. And the fundamental model for Hollywood and in general, and for any type of television show, is that there's usually a residual on the back end. Just for the record, I've never made a single residual off Dragon Ball Z, and only in recent years has Funimation really treated me very well financially in that regard. And I think that the dub contract needs to be revisited as well, because that's an old SAG contract that is, you have shows blowing up. I'm going to get back to this other in a second, but you have shows blowing up that are Japanese dubs or other types of dubs that are making millions and millions and millions of dollars. And back when they wrote that contract, that wasn't the case. So it's been 20 or 30 years, or a long time since that contract's been updated. And so if you're on like Pokemon, which I'm on, or Dragon Ball, and it's on TV, we should be getting a residual. But back to the SAG-AFTRA strike, the problem with that article was it didn't put a lot of data in perspective. And what that data is, for example, using the Fallout game, I did, I think, 6 or 7 sessions, did thousands of lines, 100 lines an hour. I made like $6,000 or $7,000, and I made $14,000 in a year, okay? And I'm a pretty prolific voice actor. I know a couple of other famous voice actors who are more prolific than me that told me if we went on strike, they wouldn't be able to keep their houses or be able to afford anything because while the work is prolific, you lose money on the back end. But what I'm trying to say is that, first of all, every performance, if there's a copy of it, deserves a residual. And I can understand the producers wanting to make their money back and be able to continue to make games. And I think after that, there should definitely be a residual on the back end. If you use Grand Theft Auto as an example, if I made the kind of session money that I would normally make on a game like that, it could be anywhere from $800 a day times $10,000 to $20,000. You could, but that game makes, I think, like $5 billion a year worldwide. So it doesn't matter if I made $100,000 on it, and you say, well, that's enough too bad. It doesn't matter if I made $10,000 on it. The point is that if a game is hugely successful, the traditional model for entertainers in Hollywood and for actors in general is that we get a residual for all that success. And if I don't deserve a residual on a video game, Tom Cruise doesn't deserve a residual for his feature film, is my personal take on it. That's my personal opinion. So that article implies that it's a cush job and that we can make so much money. If I had just had video games in 2014, I would have made $14,000. I can't live on 14. My rent for the year is like $30,000. So, and that's in Los Angeles. So,
now you mentioned working doing dubs, and of course, a lot of people know you from your dub work.
By the way, just before I forget, I didn't include all the other things in the contract that are up for negotiation, like vocal stress. And I worked non-union on Dragon Ball Z for years, and I would do 12-hour days, which is way beyond the union. And I haven't permanently damaged my voice, but luckily I did not. But there are a lot of other things involving the strike that are very, very important for mocap actors, which I am not one currently, and vocal stress, et cetera, that they just simply don't want to budge on.
Well, describe the difference between recording a dub session and recording a video game session, and how much more stressful would a video game session be?
Well, it is much more stressful. Here's why. Because on a dub show like Dragon Ball Z, I'll do 30 or 40 cues an hour. That would be a cue would be a line, anywhere from 6 to 12 words. On a video game, I'll do 100 cues an hour. So I'm blasting my voice 4 hours straight solid. When I did my first Fallout session, I played one of the ghouls, and I couldn't talk after that. And I wasn't pissed at that. I'm used to not being able to talk after a session. But if I permanently damage my voice, or I can't work the next job the next day, and I'm losing work, and there's no residual compensation on the back end, you're screwed, and you just blew your performance, and now you can't work for several days, or sometimes for several weeks. And that depends on the actor. So I guess my point is that I get all the dynamics of why a company would not want to pay a residual in terms of longevity, but what I don't understand is if you've got $5 billion and as one game as an example, and you're only paying X number of $1,000, I just think it's kind of a ripoff. So, and I'm being broad in general, and people probably pick my argument apart here on this radio show. So for all you haters out there, fuck you in advance. But because I don't have all the data right in front of me, and I'm speaking off the cuff, so cut me some slack. But I am saying that philosophically, my fundamental philosophical principle is you make a copy of my voice, I get a residual. Period. And it doesn't. The actors aren't even asking for millions of dollars. What people don't realize about the strike is that what we're even asking for, and I don't have those numbers in front of me, is not even just like tens of thousands or millions of dollars. It's just like, I think it's like half a session fee after you sell so many units. That's like an extra $400. It's not a ton we're asking for. So it's a preposterous notion that they would say no to any of our demands because we're not asking for a lot of money. We're not asking for decent money. We're asking for just the philosophical honor, practically, of honoring a residual of the game blowing up and you giving us a bonus payment on that residual. And SAG needs to support us on this, and they are. And we had like a 96% vote to strike. And we're not. And my attitude is, I don't know if it's SAG's attitude. My attitude is, look, if your game didn't make any money, or if you just broke even, that's fine. I get it, and that may not be part of the negotiation, so I don't officially represent SAG in any way. And this is my personal opinion. But I'm like, if you make a bunch of money, and I made $800, and you got millions and millions, and it's part of I'm the main character, and it's part of my performance. Grand Theft Auto is a great example because those three actors, who are fantastic actors, drive that whole story. That is a huge, huge thing. And I don't know what they're getting on that, but I'm guessing that it wasn't what they deserved. So, we're not trying to take down the producers and take all the money. We want them to be able to make games. We want them to have profit. Someone also make this other argument. Well, the animators only making, they're working slave hours and making $40,000 a year or whatever. And I do have tremendous, animators and coders are unsung heroes, and they do deserve more. And we encourage them to band together and unionize and strike. But there's the difference. Every single video game is a job interview and audition. Every single one. So it's not like I auditioned for one game and they said, hey, you're going to have a year's worth of work at $40,000 or $50,000 for a salary just to have your voice on retainer. It's like, here's 5 or 6 sessions, here's 10 sessions. You make, $5,000 or $10,000 if you're lucky. And then you're done, and you got to audition for the next one, then the next one, the next one. And then the game goes on to make 50, 100 million. And you're like, hello, what's the deal? So I am not rich. I do not own a house. I only was able to buy a nice car last year because Funimation took care of me on the movie. But Dragon Ball Z, I never broke $20K in a year until last year. Okay, and my first season of 77 episodes, I made $3,000 because they were paying me hourly. So the dub industry, nobody's making money. The video game industry, now $890 for a session. Yeah, I made $890. I didn't have any video games. I had one Sophia the First session this month, and Sophia pays residuals. My first residual check for Sophia the First from Disney, which I did a bit part, and it was over 3 episodes. I made more that first on residuals, like $5,000 or so. I made that, which was more in my entire first season of Dragon Ball Z. So I'm not slamming Funimation anymore. Obviously, I love Funimation now. In the early days, it was really awful. But there's still a whole dub industry still that way, and the video game industry is not much better. In fact, it's not better because you're doing more queues an hour. You're doing more than 4 times the queues an hour. So it probably roughly ends up being the same. But fundamentally, all I'm saying here is like, copy my voice, you're making money, I get a residual. It doesn't have to be a lot, but something that's trickling in nicely.
And that seems to make sense, and that's the way that Hollywood has operated for a really long time. Yeah. And you know what? You guys are the talent that drives a lot of these games. You guys are the characters that, yes, there is mocap, yes, there is graphics, but like, you guys embody the characters.
Yeah,
and I really, really appreciate that. Sean, I know you got to go. I really appreciate your time. Let my audience know where they can find more about you.
I only thing I have on social media right now is my Twitter, which is at Sean Schemmel, SeanSchemmel. There's an old Facebook fan page up that I don't really look at because I'm not on Facebook anymore. I think all the social media is actually sociologically and psychologically bad for us and creates narcissism and all kinds of other jealousy and shit. But that's just my own personal opinion. I love my fans. I love interacting with them. But if I had my way, I wouldn't have any of that because I'd rather just focus on the acting. But it is a nice way to be able to interact with fans, and I do appreciate it. It's just that I get a little little weirded out about social media. Call me an old man or something. I don't know.
Sean Schemmel, thank you so much for your time today.
Sorry, I got to run. Thank you so much. Hope that was helpful.
And again, thank you to Sean Schemmel for his time out at the 2016 Alamo City Comic-Con. And I just want to kind of double back around to a point that Sean made that I'm not sure if it 100% translated, but one of the first things that he said is that every video game is an interview. Okay, now I've thought about that, like what exactly that meant, right? When you get work for a series like Dragon Ball, you can kind of guarantee, like, unless they go with a big casting change, like, I'm going to do as many seasons of this as they're going to run on English television, right? Like, you can kind of rely on the long-term work from a lot of that if you get cast as a certain character, right? When he says every video game is an audition, it made me think back to a lot of the legacy voice actors and how rare it actually is that someone gets paired with a character and then stays there. Like, the video game industry is notorious for switching people out in terms of voice casting.
Yeah.
And making very odd voice casting decisions. And so I think what his point was that getting cast as a character in a video game does not carry the same long-term weight, because guess what? When they come back to make, whatever it is, part 2, I'm going to have to audition for that all over again.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, I'm probably going to have a little bit of an advantage because I got the role the first time around, but that's not a guarantee. It's not a lock. It's not a lock. And, like a lot of these sorts of decisions, I think are things that the voice acting community and the voice acting industry is fighting for. And I think that that's an important thing to realize, and it's an important thing to kind of point out and make sure is clear. You gotta audition every single time for every video game. There's no long-term casting for that shit. And when you do a video game, that's like maybe a couple of weeks worth of work and then you're done.
Also try to keep in mind, too, like when it comes to big blockbuster AAA titles, like, EA, BioWare is going to have all the Mass Effects, right?
Right.
But when you look at something like Ratchet and Clank, how many times has that switched hands? Right. Entirely different companies. Why would they care about bringing on the same exact voice actor?
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of times you get lucky, but, I think that that's a really important thing to realize, especially in the day-to-day work of a voice actor, is that the actual work, the stuff that they get paid for by the session, or in some cases, in Sean's case, he said by the hour when he started first doing Dragon Ball Z, is that you get done with that session. That's a week's worth of work in terms of what you have to do, and then you're done. You've got to find another gig. You got to find another thing to do. It's not like that is going to take care of you. That performance is going to take care of you long term. You're not getting any residuals. You're not getting paid on the back end. You got your session fee. Now you're done. Your voice has got to heal. And guess what? One Piece needs someone that needs to come in and do a dub. I should audition for that. Fucking, why do you think that so many, there are so many subpar projects out there? I mean, like, these guys got to work, man. Mm-hmm. They got to work. Not everything can be fucking incredible all the time. And the thing is that most of the time when you're hiring people like this, you are paying for good work. I mean, I can't remember the last time Sean Schemmel did not put forth a performance where I was like, that was good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what you pay for. You pay for their level of professionalism. And what do they actually pay? Less than $14,000 in a year? Are you shitting me?
Yeah. Look, I'm telling you right now, 100% Jennifer Hale in Mass Effect made that game for me.
Right.
Like, the differences between her and Mark Meer, no offense to Mark Meer,
right.
But Jennifer Hale is all different kinds of leagues above you, and it made that. She is my shepherd.
And if you found out,
voice.
And if you found out that she only got paid $14,000 for that performance,
fucked up.
That's it.
That's fucked up,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, even if you're walking out of that performance with 14 grand, you've still got work that you've got to do. You can't just sit up and put up your heels.
Yeah.
But yet Kiefer Sutherland can shit out a movie once a year or lazily act in a fucking NBC sitcom, whatever,
or John C. Reilly can just mimic the work of whoever did the actual voice training or whatever for
Wreck-It Ralph. Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah. And then gets all the credit for it, too.
Gets the credit, and they get a residual check.
Yep.
Every time.
It's bullshit.
Because it's written into their contracts.
And I think
this is only fair that voice actors get the same consideration.
Well, and think about 14 grand, too. 14 grand to us doesn't seem like enough money. Imagine what it is for someone who's out in L.A.
Yeah.
The cost of living is astronomical compared to here.
I made more doing retail last year than Goku made.
Doing Dragon Ball Z.
And he lives in Los Angeles.
Yeah. I mean, and it's support, look.
We need to spirit bomb him some money, guys.
I mean, you would think that someone like the voice of Goku, he would
be living large.
He'd do Goku and that's it.
He could live off of Goku, yeah.
Right. No, he's got to do other work like Pokemon and all this other stuff. And I'm just saying, he's at the pinnacle of what this industry can produce. He's at the most visible role in all of anime, arguably.
Yeah.
And he can't live off of that. He's got to do other work outside of Goku.
So
how insane! What fucking world are we living in? This is insane.
So for all these people that I've had this conversation with, and they're like, okay, but at least he's doing something he loves. It doesn't matter if you're not making the money to do it.
Exactly.
Well, we're doing something we love right here, but if this was all we were doing, we wouldn't be able to wake up in the morning and be like, oh, well, I'm doing something I love, so that's going to fill up my stomach.
Yeah, well, we come out here every single week, and we do our show, and we talk for 6 uninterrupted hours, and it's not a problem for us.
Not a problem? Yes, it is. Very often it's a problem.
Last week was a problem.
Well, that's only when you don't know what the fuck to say.
Yeah, that's an entirely different problem.
Totally
it's called
different problem.
Not having talent.
That's right.
Ugh.
Yeah. All right. So before